Thank you for staying with us. It's still Business Breakfast on iBrandTV. Now, Lagos, Nigeria's commercial hub, ranked 171st out of 172 countries in the list of the world's most livable cities for the first quarter of 2022, according to the latest Global Life Index for 2022. Now, this makes the city the second worst livable city in the world and the worst in Africa. And even though most cities have been added to the index, Lagos still retains its previous position from second to last. Now, according to an index published by the Economist Intelligence Unit, EIU, the world leader in global business intelligence, Damascus, Syria, and Tripoli, that's in Libya, continue to suffer at the bottom of the list, along with Lagos in Nigeria when faced with social unrest, terrorism, and conflict. The EIU examines the quality of health, education, infrastructure, stability, and culture when assessing the living conditions of each city. Now, our focal lens is on what Nigeria's commercial hub is doing at the bottom of this index and what can be done to change the narrative. Now, for further analysis on this, we have Gospel Ebele. He is a macroeconomist and he joins us now via Zoom. Thank you so much for joining us, Gospel.
I can't seem to hear you.
Okay.
But my internet is very okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you, Mr. Obele.
Okay.
If you can hear me, let me know if you can hear me now. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right. Yes. So let's look at this ranking. Lagos is ranked the second worst livable city in the world and then the worst in Africa for the first quarter of 2022. And that's according to the Global Life Index for 2022. Well, this isn't the first time the metropolitan city, Lagos, would be at the bottom of this index. In the first quarter of 2021, the state ranked 139 out of 140 in the list of most livable cities in the world and the second worst city to live in the world. What does this say about the state?
All right. Yeah, so once again, thank you for having me. It's a very interesting report and conversation as well, in as much as, but I'll look at it from two sides. First and foremost, in as much as Lagos is not there yet in terms of the softer elements and cultural factors that it requires to become a livable city. I don't think it's as worse as some of the cities that, it's also being categorized in the same block as, when you think of Karachi, when you think of Douala, when you think of
Syria,
Algiers, when you think of a few of all these other countries, right? Lagos is relatively more productive, and relatively more secure than these countries. But then again, it's also a conversation we need to ask ourselves inwardly to say that, are we selling our brand right? Are we talking about our progress and improvements right?
Okay, so Gospel, sorry to butt in. If I get you right, you're saying that this index is not a true reflection of what's happening in Lagos or what Lagos truly stands for. Is that what you're saying? All right, some disconnect there, but of course we would fix that and get back to the conversation.
Reflection of two mixed narratives.
Gospel. Okay.
I'm with you. I can hear you. My internet is very okay.
Yes, but it was quite difficult to hear what you just said.
So yeah, I'm not saying that the report, I'm not saying that the report is not true. What I'm saying is that there are more complexities around, this conversation than looking at it from an angle of just a report. Okay. And that's what I'm speaking to a large extent. And number one is the fact that Lagos is not as really worse as we think of it in terms of how the report paints it as, all right, and in terms of the category or classification of countries or cities, where Lagos, is situated in the context of that report. So you think of Karachi, you think of Douala, these are vastly, less productive cities than Lagos, but Lagos ranks worse than these cities in that report. All right. So, but on the other side of things, you also want to think of it from an angle of, in as much as Lagos is not yet there, as a very livable city to live in, we have also not done well in terms of projecting the policies and growth and productivity improvements forward. So Lagos is not there yet, but there's also a gap between what we are doing and how we are selling our story to the rest of this world. And that's the basis or the premise upon which I'm saying also that I do not think that it is contextually correct, to situate Lagos with other cities that has been, captured in the report in that regard.
Okay, in essence, what you're saying is that if perhaps we've been able to sell Lagos and, show some statistics as regards some of the improvement that have happened in the state, perhaps it would have ranked better. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, if they were probably, if we probably projected our stories better, if they're probably a much more quote unquote.
Okay, I'd like to hear his thoughts on that as soon as we're able to link back up, because if you look at these indices or look at some of the things that are considered before ranking any state, you look at the fact that you talk about the health system, the infrastructure, security, and all of these things that they put into play before ranking the state. Welcome back, Gospel.
Thank you for having me.
Go ahead, please.
So what I'm saying is that Lagos is not as bad as it seems, but then again, there probably needs to be a wider stakeholder context review, and then Lagos itself needs to sell its own story. I mean, you will agree with me that...
Sorry to butt in again. You don't think that this body, the EIU, already put in some, research work into this ranking, that they already looked into it, that it's not a case of what you're selling to the world, but what the world can see?
I do not agree with the EIU, if that's what you're asking me.
You do not agree with that. All right, let's look at some of the indices. For instance, they are talking about the health infrastructure. They're talking about state of security. But let's start with the Lagos, health system, especially in the area of funding and equipment. How would you rate the state?
So like I mentioned in my kickoff comments, that Lagos is not there yet on many grounds, right? Lagos is not there yet on many grounds. Our healthcare is still very poor. Education is still below global standard and all that. But what I'm trying to say is that when you put Lagos in comparison with extreme war-torn countries, all right, you agree with me, Lagos has done better than those countries. So think of Tehran in Iran, and think of Douala in Cameroon and all that. If you say Lagos is the worst city to live in Africa, top of mind, is this something an average Nigerian will believe? Or is this something you also believe in, and all that? So what I'm trying to say is that if we look deep into the dynamics, we are not there yet. In fact, we are not even close. But what I'm trying to say, we are not in a dire state of extreme vulnerability and, despair, in as much as we're in despair. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So Lagos is not war-torn, yet. Lagos is not war-torn comparing the realities of a war-torn country with Lagos. Lagos is still one of the most commercially viable cities in Africa. So you cannot, at the same time, be the most commercially viable city in Africa and be the worst people to live in. In as much as
perhaps they are not just Perhaps they are not just focusing on the viability in terms of industrialization. They are also, of course, looking at issues like the health system, education, and all of that, which those places you're talking about may have. They may not have the viability in terms of industrialization and the fact that there are job opportunities. But when you look at other things like the health sector, education, and those other indices, perhaps those were the things put into consideration before the ranking.
I understand your point and I understand your argument. But if we're supposed to have an unbiased and objective conversation, which I started by saying that Lagos is not there yet, and probably even worsening on some indicators. But what I'm also trying to say is that when compared to the cluster of cities that was co-reviewed with Lagos or co-compared with Lagos, you know, for the assertion that Lagos is the worst city in Africa to live in, I stand to be corrected. I don't think that is the case here. All
right. Yes, I totally see your point, the fact that you do not agree with this ranking. But let's look at some of the states that Lagos can perhaps learn from. If you look at this ranking, especially the EIU singled out 5 most livable cities in the world. Vienna, Austria, scoring 99 points. We see Copenhagen, Denmark, Zurich, Switzerland, and Canada. You know, some countries where the ranking where pretty favorable. What lessons do you think Lagos can learn from these places?
Okay, so so it's also very important for me to say from a research standpoint, right? The methodology can inform the results and the story. So take for instance now, if you look at the global business reports, ease of doing business reports released by the World Bank, right? That report only captures Lagos and Kano. But you agree with me that there are other cities in Nigeria, where it's relatively worse to do business than in Lagos and Kano.
That's true.
There are cities in Nigeria where you don't even have internet at all. You have extreme broken down healthcare systems. There are other cities like that in Nigeria. You agree with me? There are worse cities like that in Africa, where you have zero healthcare, where you have zero hospitality, and all that tourism culture and all that. You have them at a really, really -0 or a negative level. So the pool of your city's review may also inform how you structure your how you structure your report, or how you structure your findings, or what the findings may even turn out to be, and that may also shape the story. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So if you look at it from that angle, it's a different argument in itself, and that's an argument that anybody or any institution can take up with EIU and say your methodology was not vast enough, because you cannot tell me that. I'm not trying to say anything, don't get me wrong. You cannot tell me that Yobe State is a more livable city than Lagos. You cannot tell me that Borno State is a more livable city than Lagos. If it were that way, then you would have seen more people leaving Lagos to those states. I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So, but the conversation or the story from that report is also a reflection of the fact that only Lagos, or maybe one or two other cities in Nigeria, were captured within the review. Of comparing with other cities in Africa.
Yes, perhaps the peaks, because if you look at Lagos is the commercial hub of Nigeria. So perhaps the commercial hub of each of these countries, because if you look at the countries that were selected, they were talking about their states and not the country entirely. So perhaps that was the focus.
Yes. So if you go on the angle of commercial hubs as well, it is still not a possible scenario that Lagos is the worst city to live in Africa. So that's what I'm trying to say. Okay. All right. But that's a much more engaging conversation for another day. But from top of mind, you should say, okay, what are things that Lagos can learn from? There are a lot of things Lagos can learn from other cities. Especially those that rank top 5 and all that. All right. There are a lot more stability around health, technology, productivity, and all that Lagos needs to learn. And in terms of policy, inclusion, and scalability of these critical human capital solutions, or these critical smart city solutions. I also think on the other flip side that I think that the Lagos state government and Lagos as a whole has not done well in matching its conversations with its promise. All right, so there's a lot of smart city here and there, but the truth is that Lagos is not anywhere close to a smart city yet. All right, so we need to get those narratives right as well. So if you understand what I'm trying to say, I am not for Lagos. I'm also not against Lagos. I'm just trying to provide an objective perspective. So when the government comes to say that Lagos is a smart city project, is one of the smart mega cities in the world, we are not in any way close to what it means to be a mega city. So a lot more learnings needs to come into view to really correct. But Lagos is not the worst city in Africa to be there.
You keep emphasizing that, but of course I see the need for that, because we do not need to take in everything we get from the outside world hook, line and sinker without a proper review.
We are not telling our stories enough, and that's an important conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gospel Obele, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Is an economist, and of course he's been talking to us about this report from the EIU saying Lagos is the worst place to live in the world, and the second worst in the world and the worst in Africa. But of course we would believe in it there. We'll take a break now. When we come back, it will be time to delve into the global oil, and of course to see rather another topical issue before we delve into the global oil market. Please stay with us.